Last episode, our season ended on one of the craziest games I've seen in Madden in quite some time. The first half of that game was absolutely wild, but ultimately the turnovers by our quarterback just ended up being too much to overcome in our third loss of the season against the Cincinnati Bengals. And today we tie a bow on that second season and head into the offseason. In terms of Pro Bowlers for your Cleveland Browns this year, our lone offensive Pro Bowler would be rookie guard Tyler Stevenson. He ended up making the Pro Bowl this year as a rookie, which is pretty impressive. Myles Garrett makes it, no surprise there, with his 20.5 sacks this year. Mike Hall, 9.5 sacks at defensive tackle, makes it. And Greg Newsome is the number one corner in the AFC with his 8 interceptions this season. In terms of the Super Bowl, we'll be getting to that right here. And it looks like we get a little bit of a spoiler alert for the first time in Madden. I have one rookie of the year. The Super Bowl will be the Green Bay Packers against the Indianapolis Colts. So the Colts are going crazy this rebuild here, now on their second Super Bowl appearance. Excuse me, I can't talk right now. We'd get Dan Quinn of the Commanders as your coach of the year. MVP is Patrick Mahomes. Offensive player is Rashee Rice. Defensive player of the year is officially Myles Garrett. Offensive rookie of the year goes to receiver Matt Driver, who got himself 1,000 yards on the year. Ben Folds also wins defensive rookie of the year, racked up a bunch of tackles this season. Mahomes is your quarterback. Pacheco, best running back. Rice, receiver. Trace Smith. So the Chiefs just swept the best entire offensive side of the ball. Myles Garrett is your defensive lineman. Nick Bonito, your linebacker. Greg Newsome wins best defensive back. So the Chiefs and the Browns ended up sweeping a lot of the awards for the AFC. These awards are going to give us some nice upgrades here. Ben Folds, 2 upgrade points here. Let's help him out in the coverage aspect of his game, I'd say. He's already a pretty nice playmaker attacking downhill when he's kind of going against the run, and he's up to superstar development off of normal when he was drafted. There's a lot of controversy about the trade down in the 3rd round of the last year's draft. I think deservedly so. We missed out on a really good tight ends. I ended up thinking tight end just wasn't a good enough need, so we got Ben Folds instead after a trade down. Didn't look great initially with the normal development, but after winning defensive rookie of the year and getting up to superstar, I think you have to like how that move is turning out here. We get to assign him a ability slot. It says he has an upgrade here, but it says 0 skill points, so I think they're just messing with me here. Matt Driver, he does not go up to superstar X Factor, look like, even though he did win an award. But I think sticking at superstar is plenty good. We'll go up to 85 overall just to give him that extra ability slot, which he gets short elite. So there you have it for him. Really solid in his rookie year, the lone receiver, over 1,000 yards for the squad. And then Kalen Bullock here also will upgrade his zone a bit, get him to a 79 overall. He's shown some nice development, of course, made that insane play in the last episode to turn that screen pass into a fumble with his deflection. And who will end up being victorious here in the Super Bowl? Green Bay versus Indianapolis. Not your typical Madden matchup of years past. Neither of those teams seem to be the playbooks that always make it, and the Colts win the Super Bowl. I believe they won last year too, didn't they? Yeah, that's back-to-back Super Bowl championship for your Indianapolis. Oh no, it was wrong. It was the Green Bay Packers. Why does it show opposite on this screen right here? Up at the top of your screen, it shows 35 on the side of the Colts. I don't know why they do it like that. It seems pretty easy to not mess it up, but Madden messes things up that are easy not to mess up oftentimes, I would say. So here's your end of season recap once more. Jordan Love wins Super Bowl MVP, and the Green Bay Packers take home another Lombardi trophy. After I'm a little hesitant to see these storylines here, but we do have some upgrades. I think it's just our practice squad players. Indeed, it will be. We got some interesting guys on the practice squad, though. E.16, who is currently on the Eagles, I think he's a fun player. We'll upgrade him, just try to increase his overall here. +1 finesse, +2 power. But there's a receiver up here at the top that ended up sneaking through the entire season on our practice squad, who I think has a potential to be pretty interesting here. 6'1", 95 speed and acceleration. Probably going to take an injury for him to factor in next season, but could be somebody that we see have some sort of role. With a playmaker upgrade here, hoping that we got some short and medium. We did get some medium out there. Definitely don't want him to be wearing the number 20 going forward if he's going to be playing receiver for us. The rest of these practice squad players will just let upgrade themselves. Some big time retirements around the league, just massive names. Devontae Adams, Nick Chubb, former Brown, Derrick Henry on the board, Jameis Winston. I didn't know Donnie Richardson would retire after his rookie year. A lot of really big time players with successful careers. Khalil Mack on this board as well. They will be missed. Screw it. We'll go ahead and look at these scenarios. Who do you want to talk about? I want to talk to Daniel Gibson because he's the younger player here. If this is going to be something that'll help him develop, I would like it to be Gibson. Garrett's already pretty much the perfect edge player. So what are we going to focus on during off-season workouts for Danny Gibson here? Pass rush moves. That's what you like to see. I think something that could be fun for this is I think there's a chance that we move Daniel Gibson full-time inside. And so I think this one right here would kind of go into changing his body type. I think one thing that we might be focusing on with Daniel Gibson is maybe adding some weight and some strength, but at the cost of some speed and acceleration. And I feel like this upper right one here kind of goes into that. So that's exactly actually what I'm going to be working on with Gibson, because you're going to go inside. Oh, shoot. I think he has this. You definitely know me. Woo! We guessed right on his leadership personality trait. That last one wasn't so bad. We had to guess somebody's personality trait. But let's talk about this one. Hey, everybody. Talk about the next few months. What is your plan for the upcoming off season? Make a splash and upgrade. Let's try and win the draft. I feel like that's much easier based on our rule set than making a splash in free agency. It's all dependent on if there's a single person that has interest in us. Draft us. Oh my. I don't think we're going to get an 80 plus overall. Let's see if we can get a sleeper on day 3. Usually there's neither of those options available in the draft. There's almost never a 75 overall player in rounds 5 through 7, and there's almost never 80 overalls. I guess 80 overalls are more common, so I might have gone for the other one, but we don't have a pick at the top of the draft. These scenarios, man, they're absolutely dog crap, like 70% of the time, but I keep going into them hoping that we get that other 30%, and maybe I just need to stop. But who are we kidding? I'm not gonna stop. I'll avoid the ones that I know are bad, but ones that have a chance to be good, I just can't help myself. I gotta try and bring people in. And so one guy that I think is interesting here is Jack Conklin. I wouldn't mind upgrading over him. He wants $9.6 million. I was interested in bringing him back just in case we're not able to upgrade at tackle. $9.6 million is just too much, though. We do have some space. We'd still have $63 million hanging into free agency, assuming we don't bring anybody back. I think the only guy that would be interesting to bring back would be Dotson, but the trade of Adonai Mitchell made that less of a priority here. Let's just see if he'll come back for $9 million. He would like to play for a new team next year. We'll see if he comes back in free agency. I'm not opposed to trying to bring him back in unrestricted free agency at a lower figure. Let's go ahead and identify some of our off-season needs here. One thing I think we could look at is running back. We have McFerrin and Ford, but somebody that could be our third down running back. I would not be opposed to bringing back Kenny Gainwell for this purpose, but I didn't want to bring him back without looking at the market first. I think right tackle is also a big time need for this squad. DeJuan Jones wouldn't be the worst option to start. I brought him back hoping that he could just be kind of the third tackle for us in case of injury, but if he had to start, his passing blocking ratings aren't terrible. I think tackle might be a little bit more of a draft focus for us, unless there's somebody that just seems like a really, really good fit. Defensively, it's definitely safety, the biggest need for this squad. I think we could also get a defensive tackle, and this is also my first look at some dev trades. Mike Hall is up to superstar, as is Greg Newsome. Ben Folds went back down to star for some reason. Why would he go down? So he earned star dev based off his stats, and then he earned superstar. I don't know, I'm kind of torn on this one because he went from normal to superstar, which is obviously a big jump. So I'll defer to the comment section whether or not we should give him back his superstar development, because he still technically did get a dev up going from normal to star this way, but he got the double dev up for his stats and winning an award. So yeah, like I said, I'll defer to the comment section on that one. So this defensive unit is looking really, really nice here, but we certainly need a safety and probably another linebacker as well as an interior defender. Again, we might be focusing on Danny Gibson, transitioning to more of a full-time interior defender here. At that point, maybe we get a third edge rusher. Miles Murphy is currently our edge 3 right now, which isn't the worst place to be at all, but we let Sam Hubbard walk in free agency this year. So starter wise, safety and tackle are our biggest needs for this off season. Let's see what we can do. Oh my, I should have committed to making a splash in free agency. There's 2 safeties at the top of the board that both have interest in joining up with the Cleveland Browns. Kyle Hamilton here, 26 years old. I'm a big fan of both of these players. This is interesting. 88 speed, 86 zone, 84 man, 91 hit power on him, 83 tackle. Brian Branch, he has more interest in joining us. He's also a year younger. Much smaller player, but look at that zone coverage. I think we have to go after Brian Branch. Just noted that safety is our biggest need for this offseason. He's sitting here as a fit for us. And what's even better is there's only one offer on him because everybody's going after Kyle Hamilton instead. Yeah, we're negotiating with Brian Branch. Now, I have to use the player-friendly per year value here, but I can knock it back down to 5 years, or maybe even 4. I think maybe something like a 4-year, $100 million contract. If we need to tweak it and add that 5th year to be in that top spot, I'm certainly willing to do that. That gives us 4 bars here. Let's see if this is a full 5 bars. I want to make sure that he signs with us. That's the 5th. The 5th year transitions it up to a 5-bar offer, which gives me confidence that he'll sign with us. What a massive signing it would be to add Brian Branch onto the squad. I never thought we'd sign a free agent of this caliber. We were the #1 defense in football last year, and we're about to add a true difference maker into the mix. DeAndre Swift has some interest in joining us here because we are a playoff contender. He has some good receiving abilities and would be a fun addition. I actually think the draft is good, especially with receiving backs this year, which we will show after free agency, my draft preview portion of this episode. So it's tempting here with DeAndre Swift, but I think we're going to let this one slide for the moment here. And if there's any other lower price running back here that could work. Oh yeah, we can't even sign DeAndre Swift. It's tough for me to differentiate the orange and the yellow until I actually see them next to each other. So DeAndre Swift didn't even have enough interest, which also means Kyle Hamilton didn't either. So yeah, we had to go with Brian Branch. Kyle Hamilton just technically wasn't even an option based on the rule set that we have here in the series. DeMarvion Overshown has interest in joining the squad. He seems a little overqualified to be a 3rd linebacker, as this is all we really need is a linebacker to play in the 3 linebacker sets, but could be fun. The question is, do we want to pay the free agent tax for somebody that's going to be a more of a limited player on our squad? We have money and there's not really much else in terms of players that we could spend it on. I would take a need off the board. If we can do it for like a 2-year contract, I could see it being worth it. The player-friendly price would ultimately bring it to a 2-year, $28 million contract. Ultimately, even though I think we have the money, I just would rather maybe keep some assets in our chest than pay a limited player, and not in terms of limited in terms of his skill set, but more limited in terms of the role he'd likely have because of the emergence of Ben Folds last season. I don't think he'd have a major role, and so $14 million a player for a base package only player, I think I'm gonna have to pass on this one. In terms of interior defensive line, there is just nobody remotely intriguing that has any interest in joining our squad. So gonna have to be somewhere that we look towards the draft to add to this position group. And I think kind of just in general, it's a tough restriction that we've set on ourselves in the series to require a certain level of interest for me to pursue players. But ultimately it's not going to keep us from adding a star in this free agency period. So let's go ahead and I think officially welcome Brian Branch to the Cleveland Browns. We lose both of our starting safeties that we had at the beginning of the year, but now we have a duo of Kalen Bullock and Brian Branch. I think that's going to be a nice little safety tandem going forward for Cleveland. Number 32 not available for obvious reasons for the Browns, so we're going to have Brian go back to his college number of 14 in his days at Alabama. But for the second straight year, we add a high-impact defender in free agency, and the defense is looking really, really good for next year. We definitely need to add some depth still to the safety room. We have a 34-year-old Quandre Diggs, who is the only reason we actually had a chance at Brian Branch. It's the only other safety we have on the squad right now other than our starters. We're now in the second portion of free agency here, so I'm no longer required to add the player-friendly money to my deals. So I think we're going to use that to try and sign Matt Milano, who has a lot of interest in us, and we can sign him for half the price of Overshow. Not as good by any means. He's lost a lot of speed at this point in his career, but again, we're just asking him to kind of play middle linebacker in our base package. So I think the speed won't matter as super much in that scenario. He has 3 bars of interest in our offer, but we are in the second period, so I think he's more likely to accept an offer like that. This Rasul Douglas offer is mostly try to keep our depth up at that spot. Outside of our top 4, if anybody gets injured, we are kind of rough, and Rasul Douglas just happens to have a lot of interest in joining us, so we're going to offer him as well. Our guard situation looked really sketchy when Wyatt Teller went down in the playoffs, so in the spirit of that, I'm just going to sign Isaac Samalu for depth purposes here to a 1-year, $6 million contract since we got the money. 3 veterans likely to more play reserve/limited roles with the squad here. That is what we are targeting in this period of free agency. The offers are there, and we get all 3. So we get the big time splash, and then we add to some kind of core depth here on the second period of free agency. Still haven't found somebody to play tackle for us, so as of right now, it's still going to be DeJuan Jones or somebody that we draft. We are going to offer Jack Conklin to return here. It's still crazy to me how much money he wants, but I'll go for 8 here. That leaves us still with a decent amount of cap space. This is the last guy that we offer, which I think it will be. 3-star offer there might be enough to get him to come back, and it looks like it was. So Jack Conklin is somebody that just doesn't pigeonhole us into feeling like we 100% need to take tackle in the first round. I like to use free agency as a spot to just keep my options open come the draft, and I feel like we've done that for the most part. Really, apart from defensive tackle, we've filled up, I think, our biggest needs, and still not too late to see if I can't find somebody to plug a temporary hole at DT. We are now in the final stage of free agency, which is when I can start to go for players who have no interest in joining us. So this is where I'm going to go for a veteran mentor defensive tackle like Grover Stewart, who has decent strength that could help us. This is a 3-star offer, so he will accept that. That's going to be the end of free agency. We have about $19 million remaining in cap space, but I think we did a good job filling holes to the point at least where we don't absolutely 100% need a starter anywhere. I think this free agency not really having any defensive tackle offers to consider has officially put me in a spot where I think we're going to have Gibson here become a player where we've already asked him to kind of work on his body this season and prepare for a transition to a full-time inside role. I thought he was better on the interior in his second year anyway. And so just making that more of a full-time deal for him. Probably have him gain 13 pounds, get up to 290, and then maybe gain a strength or two and then lose some speed and acceleration along the way. Something like that. But we'll see what his off-season workout does for his strength and speed and acceleration just kind of naturally. And then we'll go from there, I think. But these guys aren't on the... You can't see them on the roster yet just because I don't have auto redo depth charts on, but I think free agency was a pretty big success for the Browns this offseason. Now let's go ahead and finish off the episode looking at what happened around the league, and then we'll do our draft preview. Free agency around the league, Kyle Hamilton has signed with the Falcons, Rashee Rice to the Titans, Ronnie Staley to the Bears. Had he lasted till week 3, I would have signed him, but of course we couldn't try until then. We got more to the Vikings here. And in terms of our division, not much going on this free agency, but there will be a big one that we'll talk about in just a minute. We thought about DeMarvion Overshown. He ends up going to the division rival Bengals instead. We got Osa Odigizua to the Steelers. And the Steelers made one more big-time signing, and it's right here. Baker Mayfield. Going to be the quarterback for the Steelers. They desperately needed a quarterback, and they get one with Mayfield. There are some quarterbacks at the top of this class. I wonder if this means they'll just avoid the quarterback class, or if the fact that Baker's 32 means they might double dip at the position. We'll just have to see. But there's this year's free agency. The biggest players on the board, of course, being the safeties, and the Browns getting one of them is really massive. Rashee Rice was definitely the best player after that. So let's finish off part 1 of the offseason by talking about this draft preview and what we've got in this draft. Now, our biggest remaining need, I would say, is tackle. And unfortunately, the tackle class just isn't super great. Now, there is one tackle that I'll consider really good, and that is Robert Carrington here, 6'6", 310. Just really, really good athleticism, and combines that with a really solid skill set here. In mock draft 4, he was projected to go at 6 overall. That's just too big of a trade up. We were picking, I think, at 25, if I'm not mistaken, in this class. 25 to 6 would take assets that we just kind of traded away last year, so I think he's just too far out of range. Josh Myers is a project tackle, as you see there, only D pass block. He has elite athleticism, but F injury and D pass block combined with the fact that I think he's also going somewhere around the top 10, that's not gonna be something that really works out for us. So then you get, I think, into the next tier of tackles, and Mike Fox, he's projected to go the pick right before us to the Kansas City Chiefs in the most recent mock draft. Well, mock draft 4. We've actually gotten mock draft 5 at this point. I just don't look at it. He has elite strength. We just know that he's around 2 to 3 talents. And again, it would require a trade up to get him. For the most part, I like the athleticism here. And the skill set's good enough, but we know he's overrated talent-wise. The one tackle worth talking about in this class, and I hate that I have to come in and do this every time. The fact that I can't order my board in this game is absurd to me. Jeff Beverly here. Now, you do take a hit a little bit in terms of the athleticism, but it's still above average with good strength, good speed, and great acceleration here. You get a guy who's not as injury prone as some of the other guys we're looking at, does have B pass block, and F stamina is a little bit worrying, but I think Jeff Beverly is a good tackle prospect, but we won't have to take him in the first round. He's around 2 to 3 player. So he could be a trade back opportunity. And that's kind of my thoughts on this draft class in general. I think we're either going to have to trade up if Carrington falls maybe around 10 and it's a little bit cheaper to try and acquire him, maybe, or we trade back. I don't love the options at the spot exactly where we are projected to go. There is a defensive tackle who can still be on our board, round 1 to 2. That's a round 1 player, good athleticism here. good all-around player, just B's across the board really. But there's a tackle that I like later, a defensive tackle that I like later on that we'll talk about, which I think pushes defensive tackle down the board a little bit for me. So there is a round 1 safety. I think safety was much higher on our board prior to the acquisition of Brian Branch, but it is worth noting that Caleb Bullock is 24 years old, 79 overall. That's good. It's not great by any means, and he's got 1 year left on his deal. And unless we have a really good winning season again this year, he won't have interest in resigning. So a guy like Jamil Tuck, I think, still remains on our board. I think he's also projected to be available at our pick in round 1. So if we stick and pick at 25, I think Jamil Tuck is the most likely candidate there. He's got some solid ratings. His coverage isn't A by any means. He's also not an elite athlete, which I'd like to take if I were to take a safety, but we know he's a solid round 1 talent. So we know that the overall will be there for him to maybe play a third safety in year 1 and then be a starter after Bullock, or maybe even vice versa. We can have Bullock be our third safety this year. There are a couple of running backs in this range that I'd like to talk about. My favorites among them is Anthony Davidson, who's actually around 2 to 3 projection, but he's around 1 to 2 talent. He has great speed and elite acceleration, solid change of direction and ability on him, A awareness, B break tackle, C ball carrier vision, which isn't great, but for a receiving back archetype, I think that's pretty good. And so getting somebody with elite athleticism that can catch out of the backfield, I think could be worth talking about here with our selection. This would again be another kind of trade back candidate because he's around 2 to 3 player. We currently do not have a second round pick due to the trade we made up for Matt Triver last season. There are a couple of other running backs. Let's just go to the running back tab right now so I can see them all at once. If you want somebody that's a little bit better of a runner, then Franklin Cohen's your guy. Still good athleticism. Again, just much better runner with the A ball carrier vision, B carrying, which is better than the receiving back player. And he's at least okay at catching with C catching and D short route. He's not going to be a problem in that area. So if you just want the best pure running back, I think Cohen is the answer there. But if you want kind of the guy that I think complements McFerrin the best as that third down back next to him, I think Anthony Davidson is our best option there. Then with that third round pick, I think I have kind of my sights set on one player only. He is 23 years old. I typically don't like 23-year-old players, but he's a guaranteed round 1 talent with A power moves here, great strength and elite acceleration. Yeah, the top speed's not there, but that's because he's 365 pounds. So I think Corey Rucker is pretty much almost guaranteed to be our third round pick. Now, does he last to our pick in the third round? That's the biggest question. I think if he does, he's the pick. Might even have to trade up to do so. But if we want to trade up in the third round for Corey Rucker, that eliminates the possibility of us trading up in the first round again because of our house rules that I can only do 1 trade up per draft. There are some other players, on my board. As you can see, I have a lot more on the board, but I think those are kind of the main targets here. We have some maybe linebackers and safety prospects we could look at on day 3, even though we know these safeties kind of suck. They at least have some semblance of athleticism, which could make them interesting. Most of my board is round 2 to 3 and up. I don't have a ton of day 3 talents available. Maybe after, between me recording this episode and the draft, I can look for more day 3 depth. This draft class, I'd say, isn't as good as the last one, but there's still definitely some, I think, gems that can help us out in positions of need. Who are some of your favorite players that you'd be looking to target ahead of draft night? Let me know in the comment section below. That's all I've got here for the free agency portion of the offseason. We'll be back soon with the draft, and I'll see you then. Go Browns.